Over the last few years of drawing almost every day, I've learned a lot about art, so in this video I'm going to be giving you my top 16 tips to help you improve at art. Tip 1 is when you're sketching stuff out, keep it sketchy and loose. So here's an example of what not to do. As you can see, I'm going in with my pencil pretty hard. I'm not sketching anything out, I'm just committing to lines straight away. I see a lot of beginners make this mistake. What you want to do instead is be really light with the pencil and sketch stuff out multiple times, like you see I'm doing with these circles here, plotting out the body for this drawing. You don't want to go in too thick with the pencil, you want to keep it light and loose. You're trying to find the right lines, you're not going to get them on your first attempt. This really helps a lot when sketching stuff out, and I just see so many beginners just go in really hard with the pencil straight away and they don't even take a second attempt at sketching something out. Tip 2 is use your eraser. Some people never use it, it seems. Kind of goes in with what I was saying before, where beginners will draw one line and think they've got it, but really you need to keep trying to get it right. Keep looking at whatever reference you're looking at or whatever you're trying to draw and just trying to figure out where stuff goes. So don't be afraid to erase stuff and try it again. Whenever I draw something, I have to try loads of times before I get it right. Tip number 3 is to use your whole arm when you're drawing, not just your wrist. So I'm moving from like my shoulder, my whole arm for drawing in this clip here. I mean, I do it all the time and it just makes it so much easier to get clean lines, especially like drawing these straight lines here. It just turns out way better. It's kind of a hard thing to wrap your head around, but use your whole arm, not just your wrist. Tip number 4 is to practice drawing basic shapes. Now, this will help you practice all these tips I've just given you, where you're keeping stuff sketchy and loose, you're using your whole arm to draw, and using your eraser if you mess stuff up. It's a good way to learn control of the pencil, and also it will help you when you're drawing anything, because at the end of the day, everything is made up of shapes. Sometimes they're basic, sometimes they're more complex. Tip number 5 is the anchor method. So basically what the anchor method means is, for this drawing I did as an example, I drew out the head, and then to get the proportions right, whenever I'm drawing something else, I compare the size of it to the head on the reference. So I figure out how much bigger it needs to be, how much smaller. It just keeps it all relative and really helps with getting the proportions right for a drawing. Tip number 6 is a bit cliche, but practice, practice, practice. You just have to practice as much as possible to get better. You have to draw every day if you can. Just draw as much as you possibly can. Over the last few years, I've drawn pretty much every single day, and my art has improved so much compared to before. It's really made a crazy difference. As a lot of you guys know, I love using markers, so I'm going to give you guys a few marker-specific tips now. Tip number 7 is to always test out the colors before you use them, because once you put them on the page, there's no going back, and they don't always look like the color that's on the end of the pen. So make sure to test them out. Next tip, if you're using alcohol markers, always put something under the page, because they will bleed through the paper and you don't want it ruining the other pages. Next tip is to lightly erase your pencil sketch before you color with markers, because it will just look better. You still want to be able to see the sketch, but if you have the pencil too much, sometimes it can blend with the markers and it will just look kind of smudgy and not clean. Tip number 10 is to always start with your lightest colors first and work from lightest to darkest. I know with some art mediums like painting, usually people say to start with your darkest and go lightest, but especially when you're using alcohol markers, you don't want to do this, because you can't layer the lighter colors on top of the darker colors. They'll just blend into it. If you're using like acrylic paint markers, you can start with the darkest and work to the lightest, but even when I'm using those, I usually will either start with the lightest, or if I'm using the darkest first, I'll just leave the spot where the lightest is going to go blank. In my opinion, I think the best way is to just start with the lightest and work your way to darkest. And likewise, I always color first and then ink after, which some people think is weird. I think the traditional way is to ink and then color, but I just enjoy it way more. I started doing it because my alcohol markers would make my inks bleed, but I just find it way more fun. Like, even if they didn't make it bleed, it works way better for me too. You're not worrying about coloring within the lines, and sometimes if you're using like acrylic markers, you'll end up going over the inking anyway and then have to re-ink it, so it just makes sense to leave it till the end. Tip number 11 is to use smooth motions when you're coloring. Now, you can see what I'm doing here. I'm sometimes using like a bit of a circling motion to fill in the areas, or you can do rows up and down or across the way. But a key part is sometimes you have to do one or two additional layers on top of it, just so it looks smooth and you can't see the brush strokes. Tip number 12 kind of ties into what I was saying about the inking, but it's basically don't waste time filling in an area with a color if you know it's going to be covered by something else. What I mean by this is that I'm coloring this guy in blue for like the Spider-Man symbiote look, but I'm going to try my best to only color in the areas I know are going to be the lightest blue to start with, and then leave the space for the darker blue and leave space for the black, because there's really no point in me filling in the whole thing with the lightest blue when other areas are just going to be covered with the darker colors anyway. It will save you time, and it will also save you like ink in your pens, or I guess alcohol in your pens, or whatever medium you're using. The next tip is when you're inking, use different thicknesses of pens. So you can see I have all the pens here I use for outlining. Now, I usually use a thicker outline for the edge of the character and smaller fine liners for the details. And this can really just draw people's attention to different parts of the drawing, and messing around with different thicknesses is really good. It's a lot of fun. You can get a lot of cool techniques out of it. Another tip for inking is to use cross-hatching, which is when you use quick motions to shade lines in one direction, and then you'll do it again with different lines on top of it. I'll typically use two layers of lines for it, but the more you add, the darker it's going to get basically. Cross-hatching is a lot of fun. It's a great way to add some shading to your work. But yeah, you want to use quick motions, and you're going to have to practice with it so that you can do the distance kind of the same between each line. But once you practice it a bit, it feels quite easy to get the hang of. Tip number 15 is to copy artists that you like and that you look up to. Now, I'm not saying to steal their work, but if you really like them and you want to learn their art style, just try drawing some of the stuff they've done. Look at their drawings, try recreate it, try learn from it, and then mix it together with other artists you like and other stuff that you enjoy, and kind of create your own style from that. But there's nothing wrong with copying artists you really look up to when you're trying to figure stuff out and learn from them. Obviously, don't just copy them and act like it's your own original thing and kind of steal their work. Don't do that. Tip number 16 is don't get discouraged by your bad drawings. It's part of the process. All of us make bad drawings. Even the best artists make bad drawings. And also, some people might like the drawings that you don't like. But yeah, try not to get discouraged. It's really hard not to. Sometimes it's so frustrating when a drawing just doesn't work out after you spend ages on it. But you just have to push through it, and you just have to know that you're going to make good stuff again in the future. It's just bound to happen that you'll make stuff you don't like. Tip number 17 is to be open to feedback. Seek it out and don't be offended by constructive criticism. I see so many artists, especially on TikTok, that just have massive egos and they don't listen to any of the comments that are giving them actually good advice on their work. And they'll just reply with well, I'm better than you, you can't draw it, or so and so, and they just have a massive ego about it. And you don't want to be like that. You want to take feedback on board because it's going to help you improve. You can't see all the mistakes you make, and seeing what other people think of your work from their point of view is really useful. If you're not open to learning and changing your art, you're just not going to improve, or at least you're not going to improve nearly as fast or as much as you can if you actually take feedback. Alright, that was the last tip of this video. I hope this helped you guys. Let me know what other videos you want to see me make, and thanks for watching.